I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Hey everybody. As I mentioned, my mom was in town this past weekend and it was fun. We did kind of chilled on Friday. She's been here before. And then Saturday we went to Yonder's 5-year anniversary party. If you remember, we had Caitlin on a few episodes ago and it was camp themed. My mom loves a good theme. I think that runs in the family. And then we went to the Head and the Heart and the Lumineers concert at T-Mobile Field. I ended up getting press club seats, which I can't see a concert any other way. Have you been to press club?
I have not.
It was so nice. Open bar, open buffet, and super comfortable seats. Anyway, it was incredible. We both cried on Head and the Heart's Rivers and Roads. And then I did tell her about my tattoo.
Oh boy, I've been there.
I don't think there's anything she hates more than tattoos. And I'm 36 years old and I was scared to tell her, but we made it through. We made it through. The other update I wanted to give everybody, I know I've mentioned it a couple times, and sorry, I'm going to keep talking about it because I'm producing my own event in partnership with the Lesbian Chronicles, this podcast about coming out later in life. The whole point of this event is to connect queer women here in Seattle, whether you live here or you want to come to the event. I'm going to put it in every show notes from here on out. It's October 18th. It'll be at the new Century Ballroom. It's called Reverie Ballroom. And yeah, if you're interested, please register for that. We've got a lot of activities going on for that. And I'm flying out tonight on a red eye for Michigan for a wedding. So I mentioned that I have 5 trips in a row coming up, and this is the start of it. So wish me luck. I do have a plan to be able to still put out some episodes. I think there's going to be 1 week where I don't just because it was too hard, to be honest. So you can use that week to catch up. All right, that's that. The voice you heard a little bit earlier was Leigh McMillan, CEO of Whitepages. Hi, Leigh.
Hi, Rachel.
Thanks for hosting me here. We've got the whole place to ourselves. I said we should throw a party.
We should have. We didn't plan enough ahead to have some beverages.
I know. Well, you'll have to have you back on and do it.
Deal.
So a little bit about you. You joined Whitepages in 2017, and originally it was to lead the consumer division. And then 2 years later, they're like, you're going to be our CEO. So that was in 2019. And then prior to Whitepages, you led the marketing and growth parts of a startup like Avvo. Is it Avvo or Avvo?
Avvo.
Avvo, the internet's largest legal marketplace, and BMW's ReachNow. But prior to that, you led communications for Seattle Mariners during a campaign for the new ballpark, which I heard on an episode you weren't a fan of PR work. Was that right?
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
She's an investor in the Allen Institute AI2 incubator, which we're going to talk about today, and is on the board of Transparency Coalition, a nonprofit advocating for responsible development of AI. And then lastly, just with her free time, she is a co-owner and winemaker at the family's winery called Welcome Road. Does that about cover it, kind of?
Yeah, I think so. Gosh, what a mishmash of stuff.
I know. So when I researched the guest, I'm like, okay, this guest is like more in finance. We'll talk about finance stuff, or this is in food and beverage. And with yours, I was like, so legal, but tech, but wine. So we've got a lot we can talk about today.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Boy, when I hear it read back to me, I'm just like, yeah, what kind of path was that?
I know. Hey, it's a jungle gym, right? So before we get into the stories, I think a lot of people, especially millennials and older, I guess, have heard of Whitepages, and I'm picturing a phone, but we have the Yellow Pages and the White Pages. Yellow Pages was for your personal people, and Whitepages was for businesses, right?
Whitepages is personal, Yellow Pages was business.
Oh, opposite. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me, what is Whitepages today? Because I'm assuming it's not a book.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about this, but Whitepages actually was founded almost 30 years ago. Oh, wow. So the classic startup in a dorm room was founded by Alex Algard way back in the day. And the idea was at the time to just bring this printed phone book, and probably only some of your readers are going to remember that we actually had those that used to get dropped off at your doorstep. And the whole idea around the phone book was to make information public to facilitate commerce and communication. So back in the day, 30 years ago, telecom companies were required to print the phone book. And the idea behind that is, the same as with other public information, so that nobody would be the sole entity that owned truth or owned access. Mm-hmm. And so that's the genesis of public information. Now you fast forward 30 years to where Whitepages is today, and we still serve that same role. So we make public information accessible to solve a wide variety of problems, but all around facilitating commerce and communication. So identity verification. So a lot of businesses will use us for identity verification because to verify an identity, you have to have a source of truth. Other small businesses will use us to update their customer contact information, which, is basically change of address. But it's really important because if they don't have the ability to keep that contact going, then the gatekeeper of customer communications becomes Facebook or Square. And around the holidays, people use us to ship packages to grandma. So, to a certain extent, we solve the same, challenges that we did way back in the day. And in some cases, it's more important even now where there's, our lives are digital and identity and truth is fungible. And so we serve kind of the same role, but in a digital world. Yeah. And one of the reasons why I wanted to come to Whitepages and why I think it's interesting is because, while our digital lives are moving forward, privacy norms are changing. And so people are concerned about, who has access to their information. And so, we're focused on how we kind of bridge that gap, the intersection between privacy and facilitating commerce and communications. So it's a interesting problem to solve and a hard one, and we're working hard at it.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about privacy, but while we're kind of on the topic, it is interesting that back in the day we were totally fine with a book of everyone's address and phone number just at everyone's door. And I think that sentiment has changed now. I'm picturing, since I was just with my mom, like my parents being like, I don't want our information anywhere. I don't want anyone to know where my address is or my phone number. How do you balance that criticism that perhaps like Whitepages shouldn't exist? They shouldn't have all this information out to the public. What would you say to some critics like that? Yeah,
I think it's fair, and there's a difference too. I think, there are legitimate security concerns that people have. And, particularly as, discourse has gotten crazier and crazier, and so we remove information if people want it removed with no questions asked. But at the same time, we serve a purpose to prevent fraud. Back in the day, in 2016, one of the biggest use cases of our data was people wanted to know, is this a legitimate caller or not a legitimate caller? So true. And you could block spam calls. In order to do that, you actually have to have a source of truth. And so we continue to play that role. And we actually spun out that part of our business. It became Hiya, which is now integrated into phone handsets, mobile phones, to help protect us all from spam calls. So that's why when I get a phone call, it says like likely spam. Is exactly. Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. So, it's a balance. We recognize privacy issues. We recognize security concerns, but at the same time, we serve the opposite purpose to where we're actually protecting people and enabling good communications and good transactions to happen. Yeah. So this is what makes it a challenging job. I bet. Definitely. You're walking a really fine line there. Yeah. It is a really fine line, and it's a balance, and we're working through it and trying to figure out the way as privacy norms continue to change that we can evolve with it to enable people to control their information, which absolutely they should do, but also, keep these things moving. And, it's a privacy paradox too, because people are concerned about certain information being online, but then, pictures of everywhere they've been, are posted online, and, the insides of their house are posted online. So it's a complex thing to work through. Oh my gosh. I can only imagine the emails that you probably get from customers or the general public, I should say. Yeah. And we dialogue with customers all the time. I get a lot of incoming on LinkedIn where I engage with people, and, a lot of it is people want to participate online, but it's just like, how do I protect my information, but at the same time enable it to go where I want it to go? Yeah, I know. I think a lot of people my age and younger are probably like, I feel I give up because I'm like, my information's everywhere. So, but I think, anyway, we could really deep dive on this, but, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your specific path to leadership. So I looked at your history, and obviously you have that PR background, but a lot of your background's in marketing, and then you, obviously now in the CEO role. So I was putting on this Women Who Lead Summit, and one of the topics I wanted to cover was how oftentimes we see women in marketing roles. And oftentimes it's a director of marketing, and they aren't in the C-suite. So there's the CFO and COO, but then there's the director of marketing that's sometimes left out of those meetings. And I wanted to talk about that kind of phenomenon. I reached out to somebody, and she said she 100% disagreed with me and said that's absolutely not true. Marketing is always in the C-suite and whatever. So what's your take on kind of that path from marketing to CEO, and how does gender play into that? Yeah, I actually read somewhere, and I think it's true, but we validated that only 4% of CEOs rose up through sales and marketing.
4% through. I'm curious that they combine sales and marketing, but 4%. Where are they coming from? What are they doing?
Finance people. So the number one was, CFOs, people in finance, then people in operations. Then you get down to sales and marketing. Sales and marketing beat out general counsels. So, for whatever reason. But, and somebody should validate that. But, it does ring true to me. And I think part of it is marketing is a very broad term. So it includes everything from PR, which, yes, I started off in PR and quite frankly, I'm not very good at it. Just because you can write a press release, it doesn't mean you're good at it. So that's my take on that. And then there's brand marketing, and then there's, performance marketing. And so it's just a wide variety of things, but very rarely does marketing own a P&L to where, the spend that you put in has to drive revenue associated with the business. Now, a lot of marketing, you do a lot of different things to try and measure their performance, but it's not very often directly tied to the revenue and, to where you frankly have a revenue number that you have to hit. And so I think that's one of the things that I was able to do, because all of my marketing was centered on driving customers and directly tied to revenue, to where I was responsible for how much went in, how much came out, what the margins were. And so I had to understand all of the numbers. And that led to me having P&L responsibility and general management responsibility, which not every marketing person does. And, the closer you are to the numbers and managing the money that comes in and comes out of the company, that's a C-suite skill pretty much that you need to have across the board.
Which is crazy to me, because I think communication and managing people should be like the number one skill, but I don't feel like that is looked at a lot. Kind of similar to your point, when I was working in the newspaper, the 4 people on the executive team, there's the publisher, also known as president in other words, the VP of sales, the editor-in-chief, and the director of events. So the 3 options to rise to publisher were editor-in-chief, VP of sales, or director of events. And when I was there, never had a director of events gone to a publisher, which I found fascinating, because as the events person, we're dealing with revenue and expenses. And why would an editor-in-chief have any? I feel like they would all have kind of equal opportunity to move up to publisher. I think one person has now, one of my friends, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a reputation or, stereotype that goes with marketing, that it's soft skills, it's marketing.
Get them out of here.
Anybody can be a marketer because you can write a sentence or you can put up a tent. It's just, so I do think it gets discounted.
Yeah, it's one of those things that everyone thinks they can do.
Yeah,
I agree.
And they can't.
So true. Okay, we've got 4 articles. Hopefully we can get through all of them. There's just a lot to talk about. So the Allen Institute for AI lands $152 million, and you're an investor, not on the board, right?
That's correct. So I am a early and small investor in the AI2 incubator. So that is the part of AI2 that is for profit, and it invests in AI-driven companies.
Okay, cool. We'll cover that in just a second. We have more tech layoffs. There was an Everett man indicted for Ponzi scheme. I hinted at this last episode. I don't know what my deal is, why I'm so obsessed with Ponzi schemes, but I'm excited to talk about it. And the last one is Washington grapes save Canada wineries after a freeze. So we'll talk a little bit more about your wine area. So let's start with the Allen Institute. You'd mentioned a little bit about it. The article basically says that they land this $152 million, and it's from 2 sources, NVIDIA and National Science Foundation. They split it pretty evenly with how much they donated, and it's all meant to build a new national project that's going to build AI models for scientific research. Sounds good to me. And then the other, you actually brought me this article. The other one was about their new headquarters in North Lake Union, so over by Ivers, and it's a mass timber headquarters.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this, because it's actually very meaningful, but there's a lot of acronyms that go into this, and what does it mean, and blah, blah, blah. So AI2, so this funding went to the part of AI2, which is a nonprofit, and they create open source AI models for use primarily in research. And so this funding goes directly towards science.
Yay.
Right? So not silly stuff, not chat bots, not
turning dogs into humans. Yeah.
Learn what's in the refrigerator AI. This goes to science. And at a time where, science funding is getting cut, having an investment like this, which this is the first time that the NSF has made an investment in AI, and to have it be this big in partnership with NVIDIA. And what NVIDIA does is it brings chips and technology that is used by the biggest AI companies in the world and brings it to this nonprofit to, again, benefit science. So, and science can include, in this case, it includes energy tech, it includes medical tech, mineral tech. So all of these big, problems that, frankly, we're facing, and in some part that AI is contributing to because of its environmental impact. And so the way I think about it, I was reading this article, of course, about AI, because there's a bajillion of them, in the New York Times, and somebody commented on it. And I want to think about this for a second and get the comment right. But it basically said, if we're going to use this, referring to AI, if we're going to use this thing, let's use it to tackle our biggest existential threats instead of it becoming one.
Yes.
And that rings so true to me. And that's why I'm so happy to have it go to AI too, where they are tackling these big existential problems.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like we're focusing on the wrong thing. And I'm like, hello, healthcare? I don't know. Cancer? Can we focus on that a little bit? I feel like we're getting a little distracted.
Completely.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about we talked a little bit about privacy, and obviously AI is kind of its whole separate entity about privacy concerns. How do you balance that tension? Because I know you're in that, what's it called, Transparency Coalition.
Yes.
How does that come into play with your investment in the scientific research and the need to be ethical and protect people's privacy?
Yeah, so the Transparency Coalition is a group that was started here in Seattle. It's a nonprofit that has a nonprofit arm and then call it a lobbying arm. And the objective here is to just keep a conversation going around the need for transparency in AI. What goes into these models? How are they used? And to have them be used ethically. So, technology moves fast. Legislators don't always have the ability to keep up. And so that's one of the roles of the Transparency Coalition is to educate and ask questions and raise questions and, call attention to this. AI too, again, very transparent about the models that they use. They are advocates for bringing in what's called green AI. And I understand, there's some air quotes around that, but that basically means in addition to measuring an AI model based on its accuracy, its speed, you also include efficiency. So things like that. And when it comes to the privacy side, I actually think the kind of issue at the forefront right now, or the most important issue, is more one of safety. So there's a lawsuit going on right now against an AI company called Character.ai, and it was brought by the family of a 14-year-old who got into a relationship with a chatbot. And over the period of a year, the relationship deepened, got, sexualized, whole thing. And this 14-year-old ended up committing suicide.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lawsuit associated with this, and Character AI's defense of this was it's free speech. AI is free speech. Well, is AI free speech, or is it a product where there is a care of duty associated with it, the same as there is with a lot of products, from salt shakers to wine to the cars that you drive. So it's so part of the Transparency Coalition is to talk about issues like this. Do we want AI to have free speech or to be considered the same thing as free speech? Or is it a product where we can put some reasonable guidelines around its use?
Yeah, it's kind of this conversation of what's the responsibility of the business putting out a product and what's the responsibility of you chose to drink that much alcohol, or, I think especially with Facebook and Meta of how it's impacted everything, but especially with young girls and their image and stuff like that. So yeah, what falls on the company and what falls on the consumer is an interesting one. Yeah.
Exactly.
The second article you sent was about the new headquarters. I don't know if that was because of the funding. They used some of that funding to pay for the headquarters, or that just was at the same time. Do you know?
Yeah, it's just a big cool new space on the Seattle waterfront, which is, I don't know if you've been down there recently, but oh my gosh, the waterfront is really starting to come into that vision that was designed when they took down the viaduct. So the thing that's interesting to me about this, so now we've added another great space down there on the waterfront, and it's a super collaborative space. So it's meant to have people be able to come together, whether they're AI researchers or entrepreneurs or people who are just interested in learning about AI can come to this place. And in an era of remote work, and I'm glad we're not going to talk ad nauseum about hybrid and remote and all of that, but in an era of that, it's nice to have a space where these conversations can happen, and to have it be on our waterfront, adding to, Seattle's science startup culture is a great thing.
Yeah,
we have a climate innovation hub here as well. And so my hope is that between the two of those, we will solve some of these existential problems.
I hope so too.
That would be nice.
Okay, we'll move on to the next article, which is more tech layoffs. I don't know if this is one of those things where, how we're thinking like, are there more plane crashes or are we just more aware of them? That's how I feel about these tech layoffs. I'm like, is it every week or am I just more aware of it because I'm seeing these articles now? But there's 3 companies that announced kind of all around the same amount of employees. It was all about 100 employees for each of these companies. So Oracle laid off about 161 in Seattle. What's interesting is they still have 200 open positions listed. They say it's part of, quote, broader cuts to the company. F5 does a similar thing, lays off 106 employees in Washington. And the article notes, which I'm glad they brought this up, revenue is up 12%. Net income is up. And then the last one is T-Mobile. They lay off 121 employees in Washington. Oh, guess what? Revenue's up, net income is up, stock is up. So, I think layoffs used to be one of those like last resort. Our company's going under. We either file for bankruptcy or we let go of our accountant, David. It's like dire times. And now it feels so flippant. And it's like, yeah, we're making record profit, but we don't want these 160 people anymore because we want to have more profit. I don't know. Their whole thing is that they're moving in a different direction. But Leigh, you've been in tech a long time. So do you have initial opinions on kind of all these layoffs that are happening in Seattle?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I remember back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, actually, to where it was like, oh my gosh, layoff, last resort. And then you'd figure out how to, we have to communicate it so it doesn't look like the company's going down. And now it's a badge of honor. So, this is a trend, like a lot of other trends change, and this one certainly did. I think there's a few things at work here. Of course, in the pandemic, back in that time, certain companies' growth grew exponentially, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be able to keep doing this. This is the new normal, and let's hire a bunch of people so we can fuel our growth. And then it was, oh, well, if they're going to hire people, but we want to hire those people that they want to hire. So it became a human gold rush.
They really do compete with each other.
Absolutely. So it was like, well, we can just hire them all now because we can cut them later if need be, but we don't want that company to get these people. And it was crazy. Yeah. And then, reality sets in after the pandemic, capital dries up. And profitability became the thing. Okay, instead of this exponential growth, crazy growth at all costs, we're going to be profitable. And so then it was like, okay, we're going to cut some people. And then, oh, it's AI. Oh my gosh, AI is super expensive. We don't have the right people. We need these people to do the AI. So we're going to get rid of these people, hire these people to do the AI. And oh my gosh, AI is expensive. So we're going to have less people so that we can pay for the AI. So crazy times right now. I expect we're going to see more layoffs. Some companies, I think, handle it better and treat employees better than others. But, I'm happy here at our Whitepages that we haven't done this. In my time at Whitepages, we haven't done any layoffs.
Really?
And I don't think we did any that I can think of before then. So it's tough to see, how this is impacting so many people's lives.
Yeah, I think a common misconception is that AI is doing the literal jobs of the people that they're laying off. And when I look into these articles more, it's more like the company wants to save all this money or use all this money that we're paying people to now invest in AI. So it's a little bit of a nuanced difference there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so a lot of times what these companies are saying is that they're restructuring, moving things around, whatever. And that reminded me of your story a little bit with Whitepages when you did separate into 2 companies in 2019 that you'd mentioned. Talk to me about why not keep the 2 divisions under one roof? Because I'm sure there's a lot of benefits of keeping everything in one. What were kind of the talks and decision-making part of that?
Yeah. So at the time that I joined the company, there were two divisions, the consumer side, which meant our customers were consumers and small businesses. And then the enterprise side, which, as the name, entails, was large companies. And it had a sales force, a large sales force. The consumer side, we didn't. We operate online. And kind of the way that it worked is consumer side make money, finance the enterprise side grows, and it kind of created its own value to where, gosh, this would be an acquisition potential target for an external company that would allow it to grow further. And so that's really what started it. In 2016, we had a similar thing to where, like I say, we did kind of this reverse phone lookup, protect people from spam calls. And that part grew so quickly that we did the same thing. We spun it off, and that company is now Hiya. So in 2019, we spun off the enterprise side. That became Akata, which was purchased by MasterCard. So Whitepages is getting into this thing now to where we see a particular problem that we think we can solve with the data. We lean into that problem, and then we grow that part of the business. So maybe there'll be another spinoff in the coming years. No idea. But it's a fun, sort of unique way that Whitepages can operate.
Yeah, you're like the Shonda Rhimes of tech, just spinning off all these different TV shows. I think that's an interesting thing to think about, though, of like building off something that's really successful so that that part can be bought, not your entire company.
Exactly.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, and we'll try and do it again. Let's see what happens.
Let's do it. Anything else you want to say on kind of the tech scene in Seattle, or do you want to move on?
One thing that I'm curious about, we have also a life sciences sort of history here in Seattle, biotech, life sciences. And I've been seeing all of these companies sprout up about longevity. And you're going to live longer, and your actual age is 10 years younger than you really are. So I'm wondering if that'll be a next sort of hub here in Seattle that will get into this longevity tech.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think we're all obsessed with living longer, looking younger and thinner and all of that. That's an easy business to get into. Well, we'll see. All right. So our next one is the Ponzi scheme. Okay. So Ryan Ware, 49-year-old from Everett, has been indicted for federal charges for an alleged Ponzi scheme. He took $200 million out of investors.
Bonkers.
And the whole thing was, hey, why don't you invest $8,500 and we'll create, his company was called Water Station Management, which is a dumb name. But I know, my podcast is called The Weekly, but the Water Station Management, and it basically would charge people to filter water. So he would come to somebody and say, hey, man, give me $8,500. We'll build this little water filtration system. And guess what? You'll get all this passive income because all these people will come and pay to filter their water, and you'll get this money. Problem is, I don't know if he had any of the stations, but I know he lied about some of them. And none of it was making money. And then some other guy that he partnered with that was funneling money through a hedge fund, he also got in trouble. So they both are looking at a maximum of 20 years. I'm always fascinated by the way in which people are able to sell a Ponzi scheme without product, without like proof of profit. And you have to be so gregarious and convincing to get somebody to hand this over. Also, who the F is paying to filter their water? When you're at 7-Eleven, just buy a bottle of water or I don't know. I just don't. That's the other thing is you also have a bad idea. What's her face? Elizabeth Holmes.
Oh, yes.
That's actually, I can see how somebody would be like, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
But this water? Okay. I'm ranting. What's your take on it?
So I had a few takeaways. So I had to read the article a couple of times because I too am fascinated by Ponzi schemes. It's like, what level of hubris and gambling craziness makes you think that you're going to be the one person that has a successful Ponzi scheme? They always collapse.
We covered one with the X-ray and the dental system, and my question was, do you think they start out thinking it's a Ponzi scheme, or do you think they get too deep in it and they think it's going to work, and then they're like, oh shit, I got to pay back these people. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think?
I get it. You can be delusional either way. I mean, it's like,
True.
I guess at some point they think it's going to cross over and they're going to be able to make it work. But the amount of stress associated with that is just bananas to me. And then I was like, this is like Everett and Port Angeles. There's like a Port Angeles community bank that got wrapped up into this $200 million thing. And then I was like, and these were supposed to be actual machines. So if I was invested in it, I'd want to go
use the machine.
So did people go use the machine and they just weren't there? I don't know how he ultimately got caught with this, but I was like, that would be one of the first things I would do.
Or did they have one machine where it was like, actually somebody in the back just handing them pouring bottled water. I don't know. Okay, but part of why I wanted to bring this in is because of your extensive history in marketing that we kind of talked about. What advice do you have for listeners to sell their product or service? And I'm very curious about this because I try a bunch of different things on my podcast. I'm trying different things with this event that I'm trying to market. What are some things that you've picked up in your time when you try to market to consumers?
So first of all, test. You have to constantly test. Test messages, test pricing, try things that'll work, not work. Just constantly be testing. There's a thing that I say that my team is probably super sick of me saying, and I hope it's actually true because I say it a lot, is that they never are not painting the Golden Gate Bridge. So they start painting it, they paint to go around, and then they go back again, and then they start over. So they're constantly always painting the bridge. So particularly if you have an online consumer business, constantly be testing. Don't let it get stale. Constantly be moving it around. Have a hypothesis. Go test the hypothesis, because a lot of things that we found here at Whitepages and at prior consumer companies I've been at, what you think's going to work doesn't work. And then don't delude yourself into thinking it's going to work by using, the vanity metrics. Engagement. It drove engagement. What is engagement? I don't know what that is.
Oh.
So the closer you can tie it to actual things that drive revenue, I'm assuming everybody wants to be in the business to make the money, closer you can get to the revenue. So at Avvo, we had this thing our CEO, Mark Britton, would call the land of thinks. So I'd be like, I think that will work, or I think it drove engagement, or I think, you got to get rid of the land of thinks and get into the land of proofs, and doing that through testing that, gets as close to the end goal as you're trying to get. And then the other thing that we've found with all of this social medias and this and that and the ticks and the talks and the whatever, email is still killer.
Really?
Email.
Okay.
I know. And, I have this discussion with engineers all the time, particularly younger engineers. Oh, email, it's old. Nobody reads it. Nobody does it. Yes, they do if you do it well.
Okay.
Particularly email that does both marketing and is useful. Mm-hmm. So an example that people are probably really familiar with, you get the emails from Zillow or Redfin, and now we do property data as well, to where it tells you, okay, your property value went up, your property value went down, these are the houses that are selling around you. That's marketing, but it's helpful marketing. And email is a really good vehicle for that.
You reminded me of the Michelin star. Do you know the story of the Michelin star?
Yes.
You do?
Well, I think.
I just found out about it probably on TikTok. But it's something about they were making tires and they wanted people to travel more.
Yes.
To use their tires, obviously. And so they made this this is way back in the day, this little travel book, and it would list if you're going to this town, try these restaurants, whatever. And then it was providing a value to the consumers because they weren't saying, hey, buy these tires. It was saying, hey, go try these restaurants. We think they're really good. And then these restaurants wanted to get on the Michelin book because they wanted people to come to see them. And so that's where you have the Michelin stars. I've always wondered why that's connected to tires.
That is a perfect example. It's marketing, but it's not in-your-face marketing. If you have to say that your tires are great and you're constantly saying our tires are great, our tires are great, our tires are great, that's
right.
It
boring.
It doesn't land.
Do you have another example from any of your companies where you tried a marketing campaign or a marketing tactic that either really worked or maybe something that just didn't work? Any kind of specific example you have for the listeners? Yeah,
so it didn't end up getting off the ground, but back in the day at Avvo, so Avvo is a site, think about it like Zillow for lawyers. It helps consumers reach lawyers, get in touch with lawyers and hire lawyers, which can be, not always a fun process. And we were interested in doing this kind of online legal services to where you could actually talk to an attorney over the phone or over Zoom or whatever else. And, you'd pay a flat fee for it. And so, legal marketing, you've all seen the ads, the personal injury attorneys on TV, they're all kind of the same. And so we were like, how could we market this in a way that would be really different? And so I pitched to the board this marketing campaign where it had attorneys that had tattoos and, it was really edgy. Oh. And so it was about legal rebels. And so it was matching these edgy people with these edgy attorneys. And our board so flat out freaking hated it. It was I barely was let in the door after that board meeting. So yeah, it was brutal. And, So I worked with it on somebody here in Seattle who's a brand expert. And so the two of us went and had some drinks after that board meeting and just,
Do you think it could have worked though if they approved it?
I like to think so.
I guess I just went into the land of the thinks.
No, I like to think so. And it's one of the things that I think about a lot in marketing, when you talk about campaigns that are successful, not successful. There are some where you take a big risk. Mm-hmm. And you're brilliant. That risk worked. If you remember back, Colin Kaepernick ad that Nike did.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
So controversial, such a big risk, was a huge hit for Nike. So it's like, what is it that makes a risk work versus a time when it doesn't? And thinking about a time that it doesn't, that women's soccer team in Boston.
Yes.
So they announced the team, and first of all, they call it Boss Nation or something, yeah. Yeah, which had something to do with Bostonian. It was like an anagram or an abbreviation. So they had to explain that. And then the risk that they took was, what was it? There's too many balls in Boston. Yeah, I think was
something with balls, yeah.
Yeah, it was like too many balls, which, you're trying to talk about a women's soccer team and, women, strong, powerful women, and then you have a campaign that's centered on
and the commercial had a bunch of men too in the commercial.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
So they changed their name because it backfired so much. They changed their name, and I think they got the message. It's similar to the Sydney Sweeney. I'm sure everyone's been talking about that, but what I've been hearing recently is like, yes, it created a lot of people are talking about American Eagle now. It's a lot of, as you said, like engagement and talk. Has that translated to sales? And I think that's what companies are dealing with right now is like, yeah, you could be popular on social media, but is it translating to sales?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm fascinated by that razor's edge of risky and edgy, turning to disaster with tips one side, and you're brilliant if it's on the other side.
And how many people are involved in those conversations too is fascinating.
Exactly.
Okay, one more question on this marketing thing, and because I love geeking out on it. But you worked at part of BMW's ReachNow. I remember that. I think my friend used it. Think of it as like Lime Bike, but for a car, right?
Yes.
Like you could sign up, you pay whatever fee, you can drive your car. It's meant for people that live in cities and probably don't have a car, is my guess.
Yes.
It seemed super successful in my end. I feel like there was a lot of brand awareness about it. So good job. And then ultimately it shut down only after 3 years. So yes. I don't know if you were there for the shutdown or right before, but do you have some insights on what happened when it had such good marketing?
So first of all, I think this needs to be a business school case study. So anybody out there who's in business school and wants to do it, get in touch with me because there's a lot of factors that went into this. So I'll try and be brief. So first of all, at the time that ReachNow was here, BMW turned 100. So this is a 100-year-old German car company that is 50% family owned.
Okay. So
this is a very traditional, very proud company who liked their profits. And so, what do you need to do to get a basically car sharing, car rental, off the ground? Takes a lot of cars, first of all, and BMWs are really expensive. So they had to get a lot of cars. And then the next thing is, at the time, BMW wanted instead of having any kind of contractors to deal with the cars or move the cars or do anything, they wanted them to be employees. Employees are expensive.
So if the car was left in some remote area, somebody has to go out and get it. Yeah,
somebody has to go get the car. And at the time, too, another part of this was basically like Uber. Somebody would have a BMW and go pick you up and do car sharing as well. So it had that part of it, too. So you have expensive cars. You've got relatively expensive people compared to competitors. And the part that they didn't really invest in was the technology itself that enabled you to get the car and drive the car. So trying to keep
Meaning like it just didn't work very well?
It didn't work very well. And BMW, very proud company. I think most people would say the technology in BMW cars is great.
Yeah.
But the cost structure didn't work because the cars were too expensive as opposed to, getting a Prius. This was a BMW and an expensive BMW. So then what happens? People steal them.
Oh, no.
Yes. So people would steal the cars because there also wasn't great technology. And so, bad actors figured out how to get the cars and then they would just keep driving them. And then sometimes they would burn them. So it was a really crazy thing. All of these things that you just kind of know could happen, but did happen. Wow. But the biggest part of it was, this is a company that was focused on generating profits and very, very steady profits. And so I went to this conference that they had when they turned 100 and had this person from the finance talking about how proud BMW was about their profits. And then the next slide in the presentation was about how all these car sharing companies, startups were spending all of this money. And they were just, look at how silly they are for spending all of this money. And that was at the time that I knew this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Okay, our last article, Washington Grapes Save Canada Wineries. So there was a freeze in Canada, and basically Washington wineries were able to give tax-free imports to help these other wineries. It helped the U.S. wineries because one of them said that they sold $300,000 to $400,000 worth of product up to Canada. So it helps both people. And I didn't know this. Fun fact, Washington is the second largest wine producer in the nation. So there you go. That's what that article really talks about. So I wanted to ask you kind of overall, how is the wine industry doing? What have you kind of seen change over the years working in it?
Yeah, this is hopefully they'll figure out how to keep this one going.
Yeah.
This is a classic win-win of trade. The grape growers here in Washington have too many grapes. Canada didn't have enough grapes. This should be a no-brainer win-win situation. So, yeah, the wine industry, it's a really interesting one. We're a very, very small winery. So we don't have the kind of the global, reach and issues associated with it. So, but we do have a view into it. And, people are, as a part of, healthy living, people are drinking a lot less alcohol, which includes wine. That's contributing to growers having too many grapes. One great thing about the wine industry is we're all connected. We all talk to each other. It's a very supportive industry, hence, the collaboration with BC wineries. So I talk to wineries all the time, including big, huge ones that are very, very well known here in Washington, and they're cutting their production. So, to a certain extent, there's probably too many wineries. It's
possibly right sizing, yeah.
Yeah, possibly doing some right sizing, because I also know of many that are retiring and, slowing their operations. But, here in our little winery in West Seattle, and we have a little tasting room in Bellingham, we're seeing a little bit of people drinking a little bit less, a few wine club members that are kind of going, hey, we're going to take a break. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we get the same folks coming in and visiting us, but it is much more event driven than it used to be. So we have to do things. So this Saturday we're serving sardines. Last Saturday I did a book reading, so it's taking a little bit more of that to kind of keep things going.
Give them a reason to come in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which can be fun, but boy, coming up with what are we going to do next week? And,
well, you're talking to an event planner, so I'm like, sounds great.
I know. I might be hinting a little bit that, we could use some help there.
Yeah, give me a call. How long have you been doing this?
We actually went commercial in 2011, so we've been around a long time.
For a while, yeah. What's something business-wise, that you wish you knew back in 2011 when you started this wine?
The paperwork. We pay, I think, 11 different taxes. So there's a lot of paperwork. I know.
There's a piece of paper, I don't really want to say it publicly, but that I definitely should have had a year ago when I started my LLC, and I just realized it. It's a lot. There's a lot of things.
There's a lot, and like I said, we are a baby winery, and we still have to do all the paperwork of a big winery.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is just like, oh gosh, the expectations around social media. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many pictures of a wine glass on a beach, next to some food that, people can stomach, but it seems like people can stomach a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And so, that's part of it. And, oh gosh, we're not going to TikTok, and
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Last question on this. Do you think you'll ever want to sell it, the winery?
I don't think so. We're so small. That we'll probably just take it with us unless, we'll pass it on to somebody. But who knows? We might keep it going in Bellingham.
Okay. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, Leigh, our last question of the episode before we wrap up is give us some motivation. If somebody's listening right now and just does not feel like doing their job, what do you do to get motivated, or what can other people do to get motivated?
So for me, it's move. Move your butt. So I will get up. I will go for a walk. I'll walk to the store. I will do an Apple Fitness workout, which I am addicted to.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So oh my gosh. get an Apple Watch. You got your Apple phone. You can do the fitness right on the phone. They have 10-minute chunks. So you can do a 10-minute strength, a 10-minute on the treadmill. And one of the trainers, she says this all the time, just you're 10 minutes away from a better mood.
I like that. Okay.
And I think that's true.
I think it's true. I saw a TikTok comment that said, depression hates a moving target.
That's exactly right.
So
one stride, one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, Leigh, thank you so much for sitting down with me and for hosting here at Whitepages. Everyone go check out her winery.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it.
This has been The Weekly with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.